everybody. Welcome to episode 9 of the Old Glory Games podcast. My name is Kyle. Happy to be here. I'm along here with my partner in crime, Mr. Greg, and we're going to talk about Mr. Pete Maravich. So what do you think about that, and how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing well, and I'm blessed. I hope you are as well. And I'm certainly glad that you picked Pete Maravich so we can discuss him. I don't know how many people really know about Pistol Pete Maravich. I mean, he's not someone that I think your casual fan may know about. I do know that in my mind, he's easily one of the top 5 college players of all time. And that includes a lot of heavy hitters. His pro career, although solid and noteworthy, I mean, he was part of the NBA's 75th anniversary team. So he's certainly amongst the elite, but I don't think his pro career gets as much recognition as it should because of, whether it was playing on bad teams or injuries or, he really only played, 10 seasons and probably did not get the attention or the accolades he deserved. Now, I certainly remember him as a kid as far as watching the NBA, but really didn't get a chance to see him play a lot because, again, he really didn't play on very good teams. I mean, they were either a little bit below 500 or a little bit above 500 until he joined the Celtics at the end of his career. So if you're watching, the NBA on CBS, which was the thing back when I was a kid, you really didn't see a whole lot of New Orleans Jazz basketball games because they weren't really one of the top teams in the league. But I got a chance to see him play a handful of times, and what a phenomenal talent. I think to try to give maybe our younger listeners an idea as to how amazing and how, flamboyant's probably not a good word because it's, that may have some negative connotations, but he was a very flashy player. If you remember Jason Williams with the Kansas City Kings, look at me. I'm aging myself. Sacramento Kings. If you remember Jason Williams and how he played the game, and they nicknamed him White Chocolate. I mean, he was a very flashy, flamboyant type player. Pete Maravich was that before Jason Williams was, just to give people a feel for what kind of player he was. But beyond the flash, I mean, his numbers speak for themselves. He wasn't just flashy. He was very potent, very effective, prolific scorer, pulled down a bunch of rebounds too. Really good assist guy. Yeah, to me, Pistol Pete's underrated, and it's kind of sad that I think he's maybe been a little bit forgotten, maybe because, his NBA career wasn't maybe on the level of his college career. But again, he made the All-Star team a number of times. He was, again, on the 50-year anniversary or 75-year anniversary team for the NBA. He's a Hall of Famer. So certainly deserving awards and recognition. But I feel like people probably don't know a whole lot about him. And they absolutely
coming up
should.
A lot because the Caitlyn Clark record that she just obtained. And I think that's what I want to kind of talk about because, I don't want to use this program to really necessarily downplay her accomplishments. However, that in comparison to his, I'm going to downplay it. And so what I like to do here is to read something that we posted on our community post on YouTube. And then from there, it kind of breaks out a kind of summary of his statistics and everything else. So let's go through some of that and let's break down just how incredible this guy's record was. In the hallowed halls of basketball history, a legendary man by the name of Pete Maravich, also known as Pistol Pete, left an indelible mark that continues to echo through the ages. It was under the watchful eye of Coach Dale Brown that an intriguing discovery was made, one that would add an even more mythical layer to Maravich history and legacy. Coach Brown, with meticulous dedication, charted every shot Maravich took during his college career. His findings were nothing short of astonishing. Had the three-point line existed back then, Maravich's scoring average would have been 57 points per game. Pistol Pete's all-time LSU record was legendary, with his scoring prowess unmatched. Over 3 seasons, without the benefit of a three-point line, Maravich amassed an unbelievable total of 4,731 points in his career. Put that into perspective, Miss Caitlyn Clark, a modern-day phenom in her own right, stands at 3,685 points, which she ended up passing. So let's just stop there for a second, Greg. Why is it important that there was no shot clock? Why is that important to people who are listening? And what's the impact of the three-point line back then and now, and the fact that he only played 3 years? Can you kind of break that down and let people know, fans, understand what that means in context?
Sure. So back when Pete Maravich played in college, there was an NCAA rule which prohibited freshmen from playing varsity basketball. So the most he could play was 3 years in college. He played 83 varsity games and averaged 44.2 points a game. So he set that record in 3 years after playing only 83 games. Now, he played 19 freshman games where he averaged 43.6 points and 10.4 rebounds a game in 19 games. But those stats did not count in the NCAA record book. So there's no three-point line back then, and there's no shot clock. And Maravich was a very good outside shooter. It's not like he got all of his points, close to the basket and that sort of thing. He shot from all over the floor. There was also no shot clock then, which if you are UNC Tar Heel fans and you recall the Four Corners, that Dean Smith implemented the ice games where they could just pass the ball around and hold it for several minutes at a time without taking a shot. There wasn't really anything that compelled a team to shoot the ball until they were ready to shoot the ball. So there is pace that has to be mindful here as far as how remarkable these numbers are. Because if another team just want to say, yeah, we're not going to let Pete score 50 on us, we'll just take their air out of the ball. They could have very well done that if they wanted to. So you have to look at it from that perspective. No three-point line, no shot clock. So there's nothing that compels the opposing team to shoot the ball with any type of frequency. So if you think about it in those terms, that he was able to put up those numbers with no shot clock and no three-point line is just mind-boggling. And I will say that Caitlyn Clark, her achieving that record and that accomplishment, I'm not taking absolutely anything away from her. You have to be very, very good to put up even those numbers, even in 4 years or however many games she did it. But I think people have to be mindful of how the record she broke was accomplished. And I know there's a debate as to, should you put asterisks next to records when the record, the person that breaks the record, does it in more games or more seasons or whatever the case may be. I get it. I will say that I feel like that needs to be denoted that, okay, Caitlyn Clark has the record. She scored the most points. She absolutely did. But I think you need to make a note in the record books that Pete Maravich had the record for however many years since, 1967? No, 1970. He was a senior in 70. So since 1970 until now, he held the record, and he did it in 3 seasons, and he did it in 83 games with no shot clock and no three-point line. And, some people may say that diminishes Caitlyn Clark's accomplishment. I don't think it does. I think what it does is distinguishes what she did apart from what he did. And both are exemplary. So, and I'm certainly not taking anything away from her. I'm just saying that Pete Maravich's record is, to me, a unique thing that we shouldn't, as fans or media or whatever the case may be, take away from him. It, to me, is apples and oranges. But by no should we diminish either accomplishment, but I think we always need to remember how Maravich set the record in the first place. It'll never be done ever again.
Not like that.
College basketball. So, to me, it ought to be held in the esteem that it deserves.
And what's interesting, what people don't want to talk about is that, and we can talk about this for the next few minutes, I think it'll be good. Let me just do, I don't know what to go first, because I may forget. I won't forget the second, so let me do the first. So I have a question for you, Greg, as a follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
Because you think about it, doesn't it kind of speak to the culture that teams didn't ice the ball against him? Because gosh darn well that today they would do that to a guy like him today. They would, if they had no shot clock, they would absolutely ice it. So to me, it's almost like, I don't want to sound so dramatic here, but it sounds like it was being very honor driven, like almost like there was honor amongst men back then. That if you can score 47 points on average, gosh darn it, we're gonna let you do it. We're not gonna prevent you from doing your thing because it's honor amongst us. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree. I think, and I wasn't around back then or barely around by the time he graduated college, but I think back then, and I remember watching college basketball games where there was no shot clock. Basically, I think it was a matter of, we're going to play the game the right way. We're going to get out here and compete. I know we can, ice the ball and try to keep people from getting their points and that sort of thing. But I feel like during that period of time, and I think there was probably a pride factor as well. It's like, we're not going to let Pete Maravich beat us, so to speak. We're not going to do anything different. He's going to get his points, but we're going to play our game and we're going to win. And LSU, although they had a level of success when Pete Maravich played for them, they didn't win any national championships. I don't think they even made it to the NCAA tournament. They made it to the NIT, I think, in 1970. But when you have very proud, storied programs like Kentucky and UCLA and some of these other schools, they probably looked at that's like, no, we're not going to ice it just to keep him from getting his points. We're going to play the way we play, right, and we're still going to win. So I think the other teams may have taken his prolific scoring as a challenge and basically say, well, he may score 40 or 50, but the rest of them are going to score 10 or 20, and we're still going to win. At the end of the day, nobody's going to say, well, Pete Maravich scored 50 on y'all, but you still won. Nobody's going to care. You know what I mean? So,
right. Yeah.
I think exactly. I think there was an element of that. And again, going back to what I said about Dean Smith and the Carolina Tar Heels, I'm a huge Carolina fan, and I remember those days. There was, I think it was maybe either
I did too.
Yeah, 1981 or 1982 when they were playing Virginia. And you know who was in the middle back then? Ralph Sampson.
Ralph Sampson, right?
Oh, yeah. So with about 9 minutes left, Dean Smith took the air out of the ball and just, passed around four corners. They had the lead and they were determined to keep it. And whether you like that or not, the rules allowed it. And not long after that, I think that particular move compelled the NCAA to, bring in a shot clock, institute a shot clock. But going back to Pete Maravich and to your question, I think back then, like I said, it was a matter of teams being determined to, in their minds, play the right way and not allow Pete Maravich to dictate the way they play the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got something interesting for you, Greg, because when we first brought this up, I think in the pilot episode, I think I mentioned this. No, maybe not it was this, but I don't know when it was. But I mentioned to you or to someone that I had an inside information on a player by the name of Anton Davis.
Mm-hmm.
He was at Detroit Mercy, and that's a division. I guess that's a Division One. It's a mid-tier league, and this guy came within 3 points of breaking Maravich's record back in 2023. And what's interesting is that the team that he played in his last game was, I believe it was Youngstown State, and my brother-in-law is a coach for Youngstown State. And so I'm watching the game, and this guy was so livid, angry and nasty, whatever. He got like 40 points that game. And then he missed that shot at the buzzer for 3 points and missed it. He would have tied the record. And so then I was just curious because I know they were like all surrounding him and not trying to prevent him from getting the shot off. So I asked my brother-in-law, I was like, dude, so about a month later, I said, "Were you guys? Did you know about his record? Were you trying to stop him?" He said, "Oh yeah, we were trying to stop him." so I was like, "We were trying to stop him." So that's why I brought that question up to you, Greg, because you know good and well today they would let anybody get off like that. I don't care if they were Dudley High School in Greensboro, against the NBA team, they still wouldn't let that guy get off. But it's just a pride thing. So I think there's honor amongst people back then, just the way it was. Like I said, LSU was never a real threat. Who cares if he gets 80 points on us? If we still win by 20, who cares? All good on him. So yeah. So in terms of Caitlyn Clark, I was. The perception is and this is kind of why I want to bring this up, especially on this conservative, old school style program, because there's always a narrative about this, right? So it's always like, and I know it's an underpinning there underneath the surface. Okay, here you have a woman who's not a white male beating a white male's record. And I hate to say it, but that is the narrative we've seen for the past 8 or 9 years. And I just feel bad for her that is part of the narrative, or for her that it's part of the narrative if it really isn't part of the narrative. Either way, we're talking about it because of what we see with wokeness trying to push agendas about basically denigrating white men, especially Christian white men, which we're going to talk about Pete Maravich and his faith in a little bit here.
Right. So I feel like, excuse me, the scrutiny that this is getting is unfair on many levels. And to quickly go back to the young man you were talking about that played for Detroit Mercy, you and I discussed that around the time that was happening.
Yeah, okay. I thought that was.
And if I recall correctly, there were also efforts to try to get his team, which had a losing record, if I'm not mistaken, to get some postseason tournament to give them an invite so he could break the record. I mean,
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just blowing their nose on the integrity of the game, right? And to me, there's no, and it didn't happen, but there's no way you should more or less manufacture breaking a record. It needs to happen organically, and I'm glad cooler heads prevailed there, and they did not let that go on. But going back to Caitlyn Clark, I think there are many different levels to this. One that comes to mind is that it shouldn't be enough that she broke the women's record. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, why should you distinguish that it's the women's record? Why not say, well, she broke the NCAA record, period, no strings attached? And it kind of reminds me of the argument about Serena Williams. Well, why just stop at saying she's the greatest women's tennis player of all time? Why not say she's the greatest tennis player of all time? Well, because in a lot of people's minds, she's not. In a lot of people's minds, she's not even the greatest women's player of all time. But I won't get into that debate.
I would say that for sure.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother discussion, but I get triggered just hearing that.
Oh yeah. So it's something where people just feel compelled to just say, hey, this should be an even bigger thing than it is. And I think that takes and unfairly takes attention away from her accomplishment. So again, did she break the all-time NCAA record, period? Yes, she did. But let's take time to distinguish what she did and what Pete Maravich did, and let them stand on their own. And I'm not taking that away from her that she broke the record. She did. But look at how she broke it, and look at how he broke it until recently, and just have them sit alongside one another. You're not going to be able to please everybody with whatever you come up with. Somebody is going to have a problem with it. And it's no different than, and you'll probably remember, of course, neither one of us was alive when this happened, but you can remember the fallout from it when Roger Maris broke Babe Ruth's single season home run record. And everybody was jumping up and down about, well, he did it in 162 games instead of 154 games. Well, okay, yeah, he did. Okay. But it's still a major accomplishment. And, it's, you got to put an asterisk next to it. And that was a big debate. So to me, I don't have an issue with it. Yeah. I don't have an issue with distinguishing between the two. Well, Walter Payton broke Jim Brown's record playing 16 games of the season as opposed to 12 or 14. I don't have an issue with distinguishing the two, but I don't want people to forget the significance of either, if that makes sense.
She seems like a really nice, good person. And I don't want, just to reflect negatively on her, but I don't want her accomplishments to be used as a weapon to bash a narrative.
Yeah. So with her declaring, for the WNBA draft and not playing a fifth season, and of course, I don't know her personally, but she could very well come back for a fifth season and run that record up, and to the point where probably nobody would break it at this point. But I think even if she did decide to come back for a fifth year, that's within, her right to do. But I commend her for, staying above the fray, staying classy throughout this whole debate. And, basically saying, I've done what I set out to do in my college career, and I'm moving on to the next level. And I think it will serve her well moving forward. And I will say that the WNBA could certainly use a talent like hers and a personality like hers, because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I dare say women's college basketball is probably more popular than the WNBA is. So I think You know,
Yeah, I ain't saying much though, but yeah.
yeah, considering all the empty seats and things that you see during WNBA broadcasts, I'm thinking, yeah, Caitlyn Clark joining the league would be a big shot in the arm for them. And I think she can certainly help at least get the league a little bit more visibility. So kudos to her on that. But I'll just say this and then, I'll kick it back to you to wrap up. I think when we talk about Pete Maravich, and again, it's sad that not more fans, especially maybe the younger ones, know about him. I think if you walked up to the average person and asked them, what do you know about Pete Maravich? They might not be able to tell you very much. They may not know enough about him, but I feel like, I'm disappointed that I didn't get a chance to see him play more than I did. And it was just a matter of circumstances. The pro teams he played for weren't always very good. They weren't always on national TV. And I only got to see bits and pieces of his game. I will say, and I think I told you this during one of our previous conversations, just to kind of showcase how magical he was with the basketball. So at halftime of the NBA games on CBS, they would have horse competitions, and they'd have, star NBA players competing against one another in horse. And you can imagine he mopped the floor with just about everybody they put in front of him, doing shots.
That's awesome. Yeah,
easily. And, that was just a small taste of what he could do. But, anybody that's listening to us, do yourself a favor, look up highlights and things on YouTube and just get a glimpse of how great Pete Maravich was. And, hopefully over now that Caitlyn Clark has broken his record, I hope that will compel people to take a closer look at Pete Maravich, because again, I'm sure a lot of people don't know who he is, but he's gotten the attention, or more attention, the attention he deserved all along, now that she has broken the record. So I would encourage everybody that's listening, go check out his highlights, go check out his numbers, just so you can get a small taste of what a great player he was.
Amen to that, Greg. Amen to that. And on that note, unfortunately, Mr. Maravich, Pete, is not with us. And so I'm going to read this to you that we put together here at the Conservative Take. And this is exclusive. I just put this up and I'm going to share with you guys because I think it's pretty touching. And Steve McQueen is one of my favorite actors of all time. And Steve McQueen, I'll say that after. I don't want to give this away. So let me read this first, and I'll give a quick tidbit of Steve McQueen, and we can kind of wrap this episode up. So I'm going to read this real quick. There's 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs. In the twilight years of the 1980s, the story of Pete Maravich took a turn that was unexpected as a plot twist in a novel. Known across basketball courts for his electric play, Maravich's career game came to an abrupt end in 1980 due to injuries. What followed was a period of solitude, a 2-year journey into the depths of his own soul, where he grappled with the meaning of life beyond the hardwood. Pistol Pete, as he was affectionately known, embarked on a quest that he saw him dabble in the spiritual and the mystical. He turned to yoga, Hinduism, sought wisdom in the writings of Thomas Merton, and even gazed into the skies, pondering the mysteries of ulophagy. His diet transformed along with his spirit, embracing vegetarianism and microbiotics in search of physical and spiritual health. Yet, it was the embrace of evangelical Christianity that Maravich found the peace he longed for. Declaring himself a born-again Christian, he redefined his legacy, desiring to be remembered not for his unparalleled skills on the court, but for his devotion to Jesus Christ. On this fateful day On a fateful day in January 1988, while playing basketball in Pasadena Church Gym, Maravich's journey on this earth came to a sudden end. Surrounded by his friends, including James Dobson, if you know who he is, he's a famous pastor, national pastor, world pastor, actually. He collapsed and passed away from heart failure at the age of 40. Just moments before, he had expressed feeling great, unaware of the rare congenital defect that had marked his heart since birth. His passing left a legacy, not just of basketball brilliance, but of a soul's quest for meaning and a life transformed by faith. Greg, I'll give you the last word on that. And as we look at his gravesite here, I found that on online. Very humble grave. Considering, who he was and what he did, just speaks to him. And let me just quickly talk about Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen lived a life very, very carnal, womanizing, drinking, the whole nine. And in his last year of life, he found Christ and dedicated his life to Christ, evangelically getting out the gospel, and was, a staunch proponent of sharing his faith. And he died shortly after that happened. And so that reminds me a little bit of that. And really, at the end of the day, Greg, basketball is just one thing, but at the end of the day, it comes down to, well, to me, it comes down to faith, and particularly it comes down to faith in Jesus Christ himself. So, I'll let you close us out here with that and your thoughts about Pistol Pete and his legacy on that regard.
Sure. So I wholeheartedly agree. Your soul is infinitely more important than any earthly accomplishments or any earthly treasures you may hold dear. It sounds like that Pete Maravich discovered what's most important in life, and he could have, and I don't know if he may have dealt with depression or being bummed out about how his career ended. It did not end in a blaze of glory. It probably did not end the way he wanted it to. Basically it was cut short due to injuries. But I think, the way he died, doing what he loved, is a testament to him. And if you had a chance to ask him, well, how do you want to go out? He'd probably say, I want to go out playing basketball, if I had to guess. But yeah, accepting Christ as his Savior and knowing where, he will be for eternity, that is more of, that's a peace that nothing on this earth can match, and a comfort that nothing on this earth can match. He had, all of those accolades as far as being a professional basketball player and being renowned and being recognized as changing the way the game was played, because, I grew up watching 70s basketball, and it certainly wasn't played the way he played it. So he certainly made an impact and a difference there. But I certainly commend him for becoming a born-again Christian, and especially, doing that before he met his untimely demise. So I think he should be given credit for that as well, because at the end of the day, that's more important than any earthly accomplishments you can possibly have and achieve.
Amen to that. And I'm going to give it, that's the last word. There's nothing more to add to that. Thank you so much for that word there, Greg. I think that was fantastic. Everyone else, I hope you enjoyed this particular podcast. I hate to end on such a somber ending, but we will do more of other people. Hopefully they'll be more uplifting, but at the end of the day, his legacy should be uplifting because of how it ended and where we know he is now. And so that's the fantastic part about all this. Everyone, this is episode 9 of the Old Glory Games podcast. My name is Kyle. We are on Spotify, we are on Apple, we're on Google, and we're on YouTube in the visual format. If you're listening to this on the podcast, we were showing visuals the entire time. Check those out on the YouTube channel on the podcast section. You can see those visuals as well. Till next time.
Take care.